Yeah, I have I imagine that John should have this down somewhere. I have some background in statistics. I don't have a degree in it, but I came close to getting a degree in statistics, and and really, I've always been interested in sort of trying to value stuff using numbers. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by just calculating batting averages and trying to figure out the significance of various. I guess now you call them maybe statistics, but
You go from
quantities.
you go from batting to birds.
From batting, yeah, from baseball to birds, right? Well, I mean, in a way, it's all the same thing. It's data, and it has some connection. The numbers have are tied to something.
For
There's
example,
some meaning. Well, I mean, somebody's batting average, if it's higher, is usually a better hitter, right?
or steroids.
Or steroids. Yeah, but steroids is it might affect your batting average, but and a lot of times there's two titmice in there. You see, there's several birds in here. Two chickadees and two titmice. Hopefully, most numbers that people measure have some significance. There's a reason for it, right? So sometimes it doesn't quite work out because just like election polls, if somebody knows you're measuring that particular thing, like batting average is correlated to a whole bunch of other things normally that are also relevant to hitting. But if somebody just tries to get a better batting average, a lot of times that's all they do. The other things don't go up with the batting average. There's a baseball player that I could get in trouble with this because the guy is a Cardinal. And his John's father, a big Cardinal fan. But a guy named Lou Brock used to be a Cub, actually. He came up with the Cubs and went to the Cardinals. And basically, I mean, what he did was try to steal as many bases as possible and to get as many base hits as possible. So he wound up with real good statistics in those. In fact, he still is, I think, number two the all-time leader in stolen bases. Um, and he got 3,000 hits, which is a benchmark. There's very few hitters that have had that many. But one year, for example, what he did with stolen bases, the Cardinals weren't going anywhere that year, and so he managed to get this arrangement where the guy who hits behind him takes more pitches, so he has a better chance to steal the bases. So all they tried to do was steal bases. There's a call in there that sounded different to me. So I mean, what good did it do? I mean, the significance of stealing bases is to help your team win. If it doesn't do that, what difference does it make, really? But he gets in record books and he gets into the Hall of Fame. That's, I guess, a difference, but
And how does
it's
that
not the same thing.
how does that
See,
at all, if at all, how does that relate to bird watching?
It doesn't relate to bird watching. It relates to what numbers mean and what they can mean and what they mean, sometimes and not other times, and how, statistics can be misleading.
how about your statistics with bird watching? I mean,
Yes,
you come here at a certain time of the year and you
right.
evaluate and you can compare, you can number compare with that.
Well, I mean, I don't randomly select. That would be the ideal thing to do. I go to just as many places as I can and hope that reflects it. It's better than going to the same spot. If I only went to Lake Fayetteville, it would just really reflect on the birds there, not the birds in general. So by doing this in the wintertime, I think it's a mallard, a male mallard. Yes. You should, well, it depends how well you can see. I thought I could see maybe a dark head. Like, you know, in a distance it would look darker. A greenhead, you know, they're called greenheads actually. It's quacking. Looks like the birds are back there, so we're going to go back around and see if we can maybe get a better look at them. To get back to the numbers thing, the reason people measure stuff is not just to get a number and not just to compare one number to another, but to get some meaning from the number. If you want to see how good a player is, one aspect, for example, how good a baseball player is to see how many bases he steals, see what his batting average is. But but you can you know, excuse me, it's a hawk. They usually don't pay any attention to ducks. Looks like he's looking over the ducks. At any rate, but yeah, you can certain statistics become much less meaningful a lot of times. If you really, if that's the only thing, you know, if the only thing you're trying to do is steal bases, you know, if you stealing bases at a certain time is important. You know, if the team is one run, there's another hawk, probably another red tail. Yeah. The situation is important, and there's times that getting a hit isn't that important either. So sometimes a walk is better than a hit. House finch is calling. So the same thing is true with other things. You think that you know, for example, what some teachers claim, you know, taking these standardized tests doesn't evaluate people well, because people teach, you know, what's on the test. They don't teach, you know, whereas if people just try to learn knowledge in general, and then they were given this test, it might be meaningful. But if you change your behavior and just learn things on the test, you know, you'll be good at things that are on the test, but maybe not important things that aren't on the test. So
birds basically learn things that are not on tests. They just go with the wind or the weather.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just trying to find out things about birds. So I just try and do that. I try not to just look for rare birds. I try and see, you know, whatever I can find, and see, you know, this winter land bird survey. I just try and see, you know, if they're increasing, decreasing, or how they behave in general. Sometimes things happen like an ice storm, that big ice storm we had a few years ago. Some birds just disappeared after that. Both gold crown and ruby crown kinglets. Now that might be a Cooper's hawk.
Hey Mike, can you briefly explain to us what you mean by winter bird survey? Like you know, like kind of set us up for what exactly it is you're doing right now. Not specifically right now, but like the whole general thing you're talking about, like going around different spots and surveying.
Yeah, well, I go around to the different spots to try to get to see the birds at as many different places as possible, to get an overall picture as to you know, what birds are common, what birds aren't common, and how they change from year to year.
And another question. So, talking about statistics and numbers, and like, you know, gaining meaning from those numbers, do you think that people who don't look at numbers for birds, like statistical analysis or whatever, will come up with different conclusions than someone who doesn't look at numbers?
Well, I don't know if they come up with any conclusions, right? I mean,
Well,
what conclusions can they come up with if they don't?
Well,
They can have, you know, they might get certain impressions, but I don't think they're interested in the question so much.
Well, say for example, there's like a dwindling like bird species.
Yes.
And you might go about seeing why that's happening based upon, like, you know, recording their numbers over the years, and you say like, oh, okay, this year this happened, et cetera, et cetera. Someone who's not like monitoring numbers as closely as you, do you think that you might come to like different conclusions if you're not approaching birding the way you do, which is like very, you know,
I'd probably notice it before they would, but the thing is that I'm only one person, so I cover, you know, a small area, do really a small thing. So there's online data sets that you can analyze now and come up with better conclusions. Although the problem with some of those data sets are that people don't always write down all the birds that they see, or even if they do, a lot of times they don't pay attention to the more common species, so they don't write them down because they don't even remember them at the end of the day, or they go to only certain places where there's rare birds. They don't try and get a general picture. That's not their goal. Their goal is to see if they can find this bird or that bird, or maybe certain groups of birds like shorebirds. Maybe they'll go and just try and see what's going with the shorebirds, which is fine for the shorebirds, but not for other birds. But they don't even pay. A lot of times they don't pay attention. Actually, a guy that we were talking about earlier, I've looked at some of his eBird lists, and he seems to not see the common birds. I know because I've been in the same spot almost the same time, and he doesn't have the common birds down even. He probably doesn't pay attention to them, so he doesn't remember, and when he makes his list, they're not there. So the common birds seem rare, and the rare birds seem common. We go by those lists. So there's a number of problems with just looking at lists, because everybody does things differently.
Now, do you go to the library to go online?
No.
To look at data?
No, I have an email account with the university, and I access that online. It's called eBird is the main source.
But at your home, you don't have internet, correct?
No, I don't. Yeah, when I start birding, an area like this, I don't count birds around my apartment, for example. I want birds here. And I come out and I mentally note, which birds, and like just another cardinal. So I'll probably say, well, that's probably the third one, say. And I keep, trying to update the list, and at the end of the day, I go down a written list of each species, and I try and write down what I remember. It's not necessarily not always accurate. I'm sure. Another junco. There were some juncos there, and a white-throated sparrow. So and that house finch. Yeah, my goal isn't necessarily to get the exact number, but to get a number that might be say under the same your shoelace is going to get untied. Anyway, to get a number that could be under the same conditions, would probably be reproduced. And if it isn't reproduced from year to year, that the reason it's not reproduced is because there's a change in the number of birds there. So it wouldn't be the exact difference, but to notice that there is a difference. And sometimes, depending on how accurate you can do things, notice large differences and small differences, and see which ones are more common and which ones are less common. And how they're distributed even. Like some birds, like this bird I was talking about, rusty blackbird, is not found many places, but it's found almost every year in the same places. So we may not see one today. I don't know. I've been seeing them out here less and less often. Jason's study, I think, was like late 90s, early 2000s. So everything changes, so I don't know. Anyway, I'll look for it. It's a small, it looks sort of like a common grackle, if you know what that looks like. Probably you don't know what it looks like. Any rate, it's just smaller. Actually, speaking of common grackles, they've been decreasing. They're not nearly as widespread, I think, as they used to be. Although they were never in winter real widespread. They were kind of a local bird. Farm areas found, but like I went all day yesterday, I didn't see any common grackles.
Not so common.
Yeah, not so common. Well, up north, they were pretty rare in the wintertime, but because they went south. I'm not sure what the thing is now. I still, in my times in migration, I see huge numbers of them, hundreds, maybe even thousands sometimes.